what a crazy night last night for the Pistons. To talk more about that, Ansar Khan with us. He's the MLive beat writer for the Pistons as well as the Red Wings. Boy, what a night for basketball fans, huh?
Yeah, it was something. Troy Weaver, the first-year GM, definitely made a statement, and he talked about it afterwards. The name of the game was being aggressive. That was the mindset, and he certainly showed it. Really remarkable, the series of moves that he made to get 3 picks among the first 19 in the draft was quite an accomplishment, really.
So let's talk a little bit about those picks as we're going along, because it was surprising to be able to get 3 picks in the top 20 in the draft, pick up another pick that was in the early second round after you had given up your second round in previous trades. And let's start with Killian Hayes, because it's an interesting choice there. You have plenty of options on the board. In fact, some of the top guys in the draft, some of the most heralded prospects in this class were still available at the time. Guys like Obi Toppin from Dayton, a great international prospect, and Denny Avdija. Denny Avdija was also available at that spot. And of course, the Pistons are in need of a point guard, and right there you have 2 players that both have their own qualities, and the Pistons chose one over the other. One is Tyrese Halliburton, who's more of an all-around player, a little bit more NBA ready right now out of Iowa State. Excellent defender, quality shooter. And then you have an international player that played internationally over the last couple of years, and Killian Hayes, who they ended up drafting. Ultimately, what was the decision? Why was the decision made to go with Killian Hayes instead of a guy like Tyrese Halliburton or one of those top-level guys that are maybe at the top of the draft board for many other teams around you at that point in the draft, like an Obi Toppin or Denny Avdija?
Yeah, according to Troy, it was close. It was a close decision, but all along, Killian Hayes was at the top of their board as far as point guards, and that clearly was their biggest position of need. Now, I have this theory. I might be wrong, but there was a lot of smoke coming into this draft the last couple of weeks that they would take Patrick Williams, the wing from Florida State, who really shot up the draft board here. And there was even one report that claimed that the Pistons made kind of a promise to him that if he were available, that they would take him at number 7. And he went all the way up to number 4, which was quite remarkable to the Bulls. And my theory is that if he was available, I think the Pistons might have taken him at number 7, and then with the idea of taking a point guard with the pick that they acquired at number 16, because there was quite a few still on the board, and a lot of them were kind of close in as far as not much separation between them. And my own theory is that they would have taken Williams at 7 had he been available, and then come back and taken one of the best available point guard at 16. But anyway, they're happy with Hayes. Certainly, Troy Weaver called him a bigger version of Goran Dragic, 6'5", strong defensively. They feel that's where he can contribute right away, and some good offensive potential. They say he can score at all 3 levels, and that part of his game they expect to evolve. But as far as being able to help immediately, it'll be mostly on the defensive side. And of course, you also know with these Europeans played in Germany and France, it could take some time to translate here to North America.
Yeah, he's still a young player. He's only 19 years old at this point in time, and he's definitely got some growing to do. But on the offensive end, it is a perimeter league. He's not a terrific outside shooter, but like you said, I love the comparison to Goran Dragic because he has such a great basketball IQ. He's an excellent passer. He's a facilitator, and you have guys coming down the pike in your system already, like Sekou Doumbouya, who's a playmaker and is going to need someone to feed him the ball. And You're going to have some more players coming up as over the next couple of years. It's expected you're probably going to continue to be in the lottery for another year, maybe 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And then you have the free agency space as well with the cap room that the Pistons have. You're going to be able to bring in playmakers. And even right now, immediately, you still have those playmaking players on your team like a Derrick Rose and like a Blake Griffin in the interim. And as you're trying to maybe move those guys and continue to build those assets up and rebuild for the future, having a playmaker that can get those guys the ball is maybe a 3D chess move for Troy Weaver in the interim, and also a move for in the future. So also in the moves that Troy Weaver made on draft night, one of the more surprising moves maybe for people that were expecting a gradual rebuild and maybe not an entire wiping of what is currently there and a full rebuild was the trade of Luke Canard. It was a 3-team deal with the Nets and with the Clippers. Pistons pick up the 16th overall pick. They send Luke Canard off to the Los Angeles Clippers in that trade. And Luke Canard was one of those guys that was looked at as a building block player potentially here in Detroit, drafted by Stan Van Gundy, an excellent shooter, improving every year, but he's coming to the end of that contract, and it is really at that decision point now where if he's not someone that's going to be one of those it guys on your team in the future, you maybe want to deal him and bring some assets in, instead of paying him $15, $20 million a year after matching an offer sheet when he becomes a restricted free agent. What led, other than, of course, the being aggressive, picking up assets, maybe reaching for a couple of guys in the first round that you maybe wouldn't have had an opportunity at with the number of draft picks you have, what was the motivation for Troy Weaver to deal a guy like Luke Canard that for many was one of those people on the team that people were looking at as someone that was going to prevail through this rebuild?
Yeah, exactly what you stated. They simply just didn't want to pay him the big deal after this going into the final year of his contract, because it's not going to be a team that's going to contend here for the next few years. They're still rebuilding. Canard didn't fit that timeline, and they didn't want to devote that much money to a guy, who'd basically be on a mediocre team for the next few years. And, I think there was also some concern, too. He's had some knee issues with both knees, missed a lot of time last season, bilateral tendonitis. And I think that also played into the decision. And, they were able to get a mid-first-round pick for him. So I think they're certainly happy with that. The guy that they got for him, very promising, Sadiq Bey, from Villanova, an athletic wing who shot, I believe, 42% from three-point range last year, 40% career shooter in his 2 years at Villanova. And so, that was one of the main things that they miss with Luke Canard is his shooting, his three-point shooting, and they're hoping, eventually Bey can fill that void.
Yeah, Sadiq Bey is an interesting young prospect, 6'8", 216 pounds out of Villanova, just a sophomore, but he led his team in scoring with 16 points, decent rebounder as well, about 5 rebounds, and that outside shooting percentage, his three-point shooting percentage being just around that 50% mark at 45% is excellent, especially in today's NBA and with the assets that you have on the team in the backcourt, guys like Killian Hayes coming up. So also, we talk about Sadiq Bey, one of those guys that they did pick up with those draft day trades and some of the assets that they did pick up and throughout draft night and the days before. Another guy is Isaiah Stewart, who's a center. Now the Pistons, of course, last season dealt Andre Drummond away, the center position somewhere that was a place that was a little bit of a weakness for this team. They pick up Isaiah Stewart, who previously was one of those guys in this draft class that was looked at coming into college as a hot prospect. He was one of the more highly recruited guys in this class, kind of overlooked in this draft, and he fits that mold that we're seeing in today's NBA of kind of a smaller but really athletic center. Tell us a little bit about what Troy Weaver and his staff liked about Isaiah Stewart.
Like you mentioned, 6'9", not a true center size, but really bulky and strong at 250. Tough, physical. It kind of fits into that kind of a bad boys going to work type Piston type player. with that kind of attitude to match. He basically said, I read a quote where he said that he's dominated the players, some of the players that went ahead of him in the draft, and and that's position. The center position after point guard, that was their next biggest need. Like you mentioned, losing Andre Drummond, Christian Wood, who's not really a true center, a power forward, but can play the center spot if needed. Still some questions over, are they going to be able to sign him once free agency starts on Friday? So that was a void that they needed to fill, and it looks like, by all indications, Stewart was a good pick there.
Ansar Khan with us on the Oakland County Megacast, MLive beat writer for the Detroit Pistons and the Detroit Red Wings. Last night, the Pistons having a high-quality draft, picking up a lot of assets, moving some players around, clearing some future cap room. Guys like Luke Canard on a $7.5 million contract this season being moved. It would expire. He'd be a restricted free agent, likely would have gotten an offer from another team that would have been well above the qualifying offer, and of course those injury issues. They pick up 3 first-round picks total, 3 in the top 20. They also get the 38th pick and pick up Saban Lee from Vanderbilt in the second round, and some other guys additionally, veteran and Trevor Ariza, who may or may not be with the team, and other younger players for middle of the depth chart or lower on the depth chart, like Rodney McGruder and Tony Bradley. So, Ansar, just a few more minutes with you on the program today. The NBA also released some details for what it's going to do in this 2021-2022 season with, of course, COVID-19, at least for the first half of the season, maybe more, still very much playing a factor in how the league is played. They're going to play 72-game season. It's going to start Christmas week. They're going to release half the schedule during training camp and half the schedule at about the midway point of the season, and there's going to be some limited options in terms of having crowds in NBA arenas. Can you talk a little bit about the NBA, about what in the NBA circles in the Detroit area and the Detroit Pistons organization, their thoughts maybe are on this upcoming season, or give us your thoughts on the plans that the National Basketball Association has to enter another season under the constraints of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things to come out of that reveal earlier this week was the play-in tournament, where they'll include the ninth and 10th seeds, and they'll play off against the 7th and 8th seeds to determine who gets into the field. Certainly, that's going to open up opportunities there, for a lot of teams that were bunched up there, that you see every year fighting for those last few playoff spots. And, that could, maybe it includes the Pistons. Still remains to be seen. I certainly don't think they're a better team right now today on paper after losing essentially 2 starters and Bruce Brown with his defense and Luke Canard with his offense for some futures. So I don't know if they'll be quite good enough to get into that 10th seed to qualify, but still, it'll certainly generate some interest. And it's interesting too that they're going to do it in halves, reveal half the schedule. Because certainly you got to figure there's going to be games canceled and rearranged. We've seen it in the NFL, and in the end, it's a good move by the NBA because this gives them more flexibility. They can, whatever games are canceled or postponed the first half, they can work those into the second half of the schedule in hopes of getting all teams to play the 72 games, although that could be a challenge as well.
Ansar Khan with us, Pistons and Red Wings beat writer for MLive, joining us on the Oakland County Megacast. Ansar, just another 2 or so minutes left with you today on the program, as Troy Weaver definitely kick-started the full rebuild with the Pistons last night on draft night, picking up 3 first-round picks in the top 20 overall selections and the 38th pick in the second round as well, wheeling and dealing and starting off this rebuild strong last night. Couple quick questions for you before we go. A, give us your draft grade Troy Weaver's performance last night, and then tell us what should we expect next in this rebuilding process from General Manager Troy Weaver and his staff as the Pistons go into the 2021 season.
Well, certainly, as far as a draft day grade, you have to give him an A. When you can make moves to get 3 picks in the top, I don't know if it's 18 or 19, certainly the top 20, and then get an additional pick, number 38, a guy, Saban Lee, who the Pistons projected to be even a late first-round pick. 4 solid choices. Obviously, in the draft, you never know. It takes a few years for this to pan out and see how it all plays out. But as far as right now, just the aggressiveness that Troy Weaver showed, he basically came in and said, this roster is not anywhere near good enough. And it was really an indictment on the roster to basically want to just blow it up and bring in all these new players, which he has done. And I like the aggressive mindset. He's not going to take the slow, steady approach. He wants to be proactive and aggressive now, and so that's definitely a plus. As far as what moves come next, they got a couple of veterans here, Blake Griffin, Derrick Rose. I think that they'll look to move those guys. Certainly Rose for sure will be easier to move because of his contract by the trade deadline, if not maybe before. So I would look for the Pistons to try to acquire even more future assets for those 2 players more immediately starting Friday. I think certainly their focus has got to be try to sign Christian Wood, maybe a 4-year deal somewhere in the $10 million a year range. I don't know. That sounds doable, but that would be their focus. If they're not able to re-sign Wood, I think they're gonna need to at least pick up a center / power forward in free agency.
Well, Ansar, we thank you very much for joining us on the program today. Ansar Khan from MLive Media Group. He is the Pistons and Red Wings beat writer.